everybody, and welcome back to the Menlo Circus Club. I'm Mike Adams, I'm the executive chef here, and this is our cooking essentials class. Once again, today we're continuing our series on Emulsify in July. We're almost at the end, we've got 2 more weeks left. We're gonna focus on making a classic French sauce called a Beurre Blanc. Quick shout out to Dirk behind the camera. There they are. And Robin, just for all she does and making us look good. So let's talk about Beurre Blanc. Literally translated, it means white butter. Okay, if you just see that, it's not very exciting. So the history of Beurre Blanc. For the longest time, I thought Beurre Blanc was part of classical French. I thought it was the foundation of classical French. It's butter and wine, technically. What's more French than butter and wine, right? And after doing a little research over the last week, I discovered that really the sauce Beurre Blanc only goes back to the early 20th century. There's a rumor, well, the story goes that somebody went to make a Béarnaise, which is a classic egg-based, hollandaise-based sauce, and they forgot the eggs, and they ended up making a Beurre Blanc. I think that's absolutely silly because nobody would ever make any sort of hollandaise without eggs, and it just doesn't make any sense. But that's the story. So what can you use a Beurre Blanc on? It's butter and acid, really, if you break it down into the simplest components. So in my opinion, pretty much everything. It goes on chicken. It goes very well on fish, most commonly used on fish. Lots of green vegetables. You can even use it on red meat. I mean, it's a perfect butter and acid combination. So really quick, let's talk about our ingredients. First thing you're gonna need is about a half cup of a dry white wine. That is the base of your sauce. We're gonna add a little bit of acid to that with a 1/4 cup of preferably champagne vinegar, but some sort of white vinegar, white distilled vinegar will work. It's just gonna be a little more acidic. You're gonna need a little bit of butter. Well, not a little bit of butter, a lot of butter. In this case, we're gonna need about 8 tablespoons or 16 tablespoons of butter, which is a cup. So those 3 ingredients technically are the foundation of a classic Beurre Blanc. You would reduce your wine and your vinegar down with some aromatics, and then you would turn it off. And wine has just a little bit, a very small amount of the proteins needed to create an emulsification, and then you would just whisk in your butter. The problem with making a sauce that way, it very easily breaks. It's very difficult to make. So we're gonna add another ingredient to it. We're gonna add a little bit of cream. That's gonna add some protein to our emulsification, stabilize it out, so that way we can get a nice clean emulsification that's gonna stay stable for a couple of hours. It's gonna deal with temperature variations more easily. Now, in addition to that, if you choose, you can make your sauce just with those 4 ingredients and a little bit of salt, which, ironically, I haven't gotten. I'll get some in just a sec. If you want to fortify that sauce a little bit more, when we reduce that wine and that vinegar down, we're going to add some sliced shallots, or some peppercorns, or some bay leaves, some tarragon sprigs. If you're using parsley that day, save some of your parsley sprigs and throw those in there. You can throw some chervil sprigs in there. Just kind of use those scrap sweet herb sprigs to fortify your sauce. So I'm going to get some salt and we're going to get going. Be right back. Okay, so I've got my salt. We're good to go. So take a medium-sized saucepan, add your wine, add your vinegar, and if you're using any of your aromatics, add your aromatics in there. Put it on your stove, low to medium heat. Very important here. Low to medium heat, and we're gonna reduce it down. And we're gonna reduce it to a point called A-sec, A-U-S-E-C, which means almost dry. So first of all, let's talk about pan size and why it's important. You need that wide surface area so the flame doesn't wrap around the side of the pan and slightly scald the wine as it's evaporating, therefore creating a crust on the edge of the pan, which is going to turn brown, which is going to color your sauce. So medium heat, long time. Too high heat, it's risky, and you're going to get a little bit of coloration. So we're going to take it, put all those ingredients, except for the butter and the cream, on the stove, and we're going to reduce it down to this point here. See, there's just a little bit of juice, all my aromatics. So at that point, I'm gonna put it back on the stove. And I'm gonna add my cream. I'm gonna add my salt, probably about a tablespoon. We'll finish it at the end with a little more. And I'm gonna give it a quick stir, and I'm just gonna let it quickly come up to a boil, and then we're gonna be ready to go. Utensils in order to finish this sauce. You can whisk all the butter into this, but as we learned from making mayonnaise or making vinaigrettes, really the best tool you can have in the kitchen is either a Robocoup, which isn't gonna work, or an immersion blender. Don't have an immersion blender, just slowly whisk your butter in. It's the exact same process. So I've got a pot with a strainer ready to go. My cream is it's just about to boil. Once it boils, I'm gonna strain it into here, and we're gonna slowly start to add our butter to it. Now, if you wanna strain it into a bowl and go back into the original pot, that works well too. What we're doing here is we're just taking out those aromatics because we're gonna blend it. And so we get a nice smooth sauce. So we are at a boil. I'm gonna strain it into here, and I'm gonna really quickly return it to the heat just to make sure that pot was at temperature. I don't want to spend too much time there. We can take a spoon and get all the cream out of that flavored cream out. This you're gonna discard. We're gonna move it over here for now. And I'm just gonna heat that back up just because we're gonna start adding butter to it. Let's talk about the butter as that heats up. Your butter should be cold, especially if you're doing this with a whisk. It should be very cold if you're doing it with a whisk, because as you whisk that butter in piece by piece, if it's too hot, it melts too fast. And as we've learned from previous episodes, if it melts too fast, you're gonna overwhelm the protein with a fat, which is gonna break the sauce. So the whole point of having cold butter in there is this butter slowly melts, slowly releases butter fat, and that butter fat is broken up into small particles, which is dispersed throughout the sauce. So I brought this to a boil. If you want to come in close, we're going to take our immersion circulator, or immersion blender, we're going to put it in there. And piece by piece, I've got it on pretty low speed. I'm going to add the butter to it, keeping an eye on it. Now there's no chance of it getting too hot here. At this point, what I'm worried about is it getting too cold. Because if it gets too cold, all the fat in that butter is going to seize up. So just keep an eye on it. I can still feel the residual heat coming off. I want to say it needs to be probably around 140 degrees to keep melting that butter. The butter's going to melt. And you can just check it, make sure it's still warm. Still warm enough to melt butter, still plenty warm. So we're good to go. Small pieces of butter. It just takes time. Now after this is made, you can hold it. You can hold it for a couple hours, and really, if you want to refrigerate it, because it has that cream in there, you can bring it back the next day with very, very gentle heat over time. All my butter's in, I'm just going to continue to whisk to make sure. All right, maybe a higher sided pot next time would have been a good idea. But I think all my butter is emulsified. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the texture of my sauce first. It needs to be nappe, so it needs to coat the back of the spoon. You should just be able to see the metal through there. You want it fairly thick because if you put it on a piece of fish, you don't want it to just run off. And if it's a little bit cooler, The lines don't run back together, which means it's perfectly nappe. If I were testing this in the kitchen at the restaurant, we would put a line down and make sure that it didn't run outside the line that we ran. And then we're going to check our flavor. I would like a little bit more acid, but what I would do here is I would add a little bit of fresh lemon juice just to add that bite to it. You could add a splash of Tabasco. There's 1,000 options. So that is a classic Beurre Blanc with cream to stabilize. Talk about variations on this. We could have added a pinch of saffron in the beginning when we were reducing the wine. We can add chopped capers and lemon juice to this to get more of that piccata or Meunier flavor in there. Herbs, chervil, tarragon, parsley, chives. There's 1,000 things you can do, but this is such a great foundation to have, and it's such a versatile sauce. It'll work with almost anything.
Chef, can you substitute red wine for white wine?
So that's what I was getting at. So if you substitute red wine, make sure you substitute red wine vinegar as well for the vinegar, and that's going to give you what's called the Beurre Rouge. Another beautiful sauce that actually works really well with shellfish. So that's a Beurre Blanc. We are now open for sideshow and prefix dinners to go on Sundays. So let us know. And if you have any questions, MICHELA@MenloCircusClub.com. Next week, Hollandaise. Probably going to be a 2-part series because there's a lot to talk about. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.